Righto guys, so now we're going to go through, we've done our device setup video, so now we're going to, everything's set up, we want to mark out a map pretty much now. So there's a few ways you can do it. Pretty much you want to go to field down the bottom left hand corner, press field, click on that. So as you can see, that's where we are. If you are connected to the LNT and you're not where there's internet, then you might not have a satellite image in the background. If you do want to mark off a satellite image and you're going somewhere that doesn't have any reception, what I would recommend is connect to the internet prior to you go, and then it'll load up all your satellite maps. Zoom in to where you wanted to spray, then it'll load all those satellite maps off. So pretty much top right hand corner you've got a plus button, so you want to click on that. So there's a few different options there. You can create a new field, create a new HD map, import data, or add a device. So your options: create a new field, that's where you obviously create a new field. Create a new HD map, that's where if you have a real terror, you can send the drone up to map it. So the V40, the P100s aren't available yet with the real terror, but they will be coming. So the V40, you can plug the real terror in, which is the camera. You can map out the block with that, and then it'll process it on board. Awesome system. I love that system because it's quick. You're not having to do any uploads or anything like that. It processes it all, meshes it all on board, and yeah, it's an awesome little platform, that one. It's really handy. So we're just going to create a new field. So pretty much there's a few ways you can do this. One, like I can literally just press on the satellite map and you can see I'm marking a field like that.
Field
and
form.
That's a field. You can tell once you've done that, you tell the drone to spray in that field at whatever rates, and you're all good. That's a good little option if, say, you don't have to be spot on accurate, you're flying above the trees or in a very open area, because what happens is those satellite maps can be out a meter or so, because obviously satellite maps aren't always perfect. You can't zoom in and say, oh, there's a tree there, I want to mark around that tree, because 9 times out of 10 I reckon that's probably a meter or so out, and you can hit it with the drone. So say if we've marked out that, so obviously all I'm doing is pressing the band, or we've already formed it now. But so now down the bottom left hand corner here you've got field boundary. If I click on that, I can also add obstacles. So now if I want to add an obstacle, literally do the same thing.
Obstacle form.
Like that. I can create a new obstacle.
Obstacle form.
Also, if I click on the obstacle again, I can go restricted. So what a restricted zone is that is an area where the drone will still fly over it, but it won't spray or seed. So pretty much great for dams, great for roadways and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really handy, that. So if we go out of that, go back, we'll go back to boundaries. So pretty much, oh, I must have set something up here. Oh, I started a new one. So that's a rough sort of map you can do, great for fields where if you're doing seeding of paddocks, and it doesn't matter if a bit of seed goes a meter all the way or the other side or anything like that. It's great for that. So that's good, handy for that. You can also when you've marked out your HD map, you can click on that HD map and it'll bring that up, and then that's a much more accurate map. So doing exactly like what we've done here, marking out with your finger of your areas, you can mark out your obstacles and all those sort of things. So another way, like a lot of ways that we do it at the moment for nice open fields, we just want to run around the boundary, but we still want to be pretty accurate around the boundary. There's no obstacles or anything in there. We'll just map it with ACS2G, so that has an RTK receiver on top. Most people, we don't really sell them without them. So the RTK receiver sits on top, and you can use that as a very accurate marking method. So all you're doing here is, instead of marking on your fingers, literally all you're doing is on the right hand side here where the finger icon is, above that is your ACS2. So you can see that there. So I would hit use. The only thing is though, I don't have the RTK receiver on at the moment, so it's not going to go into RTK mode. But pretty much all you do then is literally it'll come up on the screen, for the like you have a little dot there, and then we'll turn
Disable touching to add points. Enable touching to add points.
So then what happens once that comes up, there'll be a little, you either press the A button on the ACS2 to mark the point when you're walking around, or you press, there'll be like a little green button there on the main screen. So either that or press the A button. Just make sure that it does record the point. Sometimes if you don't have a heap of satellites in the area, or sometimes you have the RTK pointing down, the ACS2 pointing down where it's not receiving the satellite, sometimes you may get, you know, it might not record the point properly. So just make sure it does record the point before you move to the next point, save you having to walk back. Once you've also got to make sure, like I said in the previous video, make sure your RTK is set up if you want to use the ACS2, because that's how it gets its accurate signal. So make sure your base station is set up, make sure that you've put it into a fixed location, and record those coordinates as well. Because if you want to go back to that field, make sure you record those coordinates, so that when, instead of hitting single touch next time, all you do is press enter manual coordinates, and there is a save function on there now as well, where you can save those coordinates, and then just all you do is type in the area that it is, and then it'll bring up that. So that's pretty handy. I guess that's a basic sort of, you know, that's how that works. So all you do is confirm, and I'll just say test. You can put in other notes and everything, add pictures and everything like that. It's not like the old app where you have to go and upload it and then assign it to the job. You don't have to worry about any of that. So now, if we once you're in operation, all you're hitting is start operation. Select the map on the field. Field on the map, sorry, back to front. In case you have multiple ones on there. So you can see this is a rough sort of map that I marked out.
Bruce liquid tank online.
It's going to go through all this because I don't have anything. I think we've actually unplugged a lot of this because we're swapping this one over to the Cedar. So you can see down the bottom here we've got a few different options. We've got your route settings. So if you click on that, that's where you can change all your heights. You know, you can make it go up to 30 meters. Let us know and we can help you unlock it up to 120 meters for above tree heights. You can also do your speeds. Keep in mind that if you do go over 13.8 meters a second, pretty much it's telling you, you know, at 13.8 meters a second, you're not going to get very good obstacle avoidance. You know, it's flying flat out, so it's not going to be able to pull itself up quite quickly if there's a tree in front of it. That's why it says, you know, under 8 meters a second, that's where your obstacle avoidance will work great. And to be honest, obstacle avoidance works really, really good on these. I'm actually very impressed with these new units on how they avoid obstacles and keep flying and those sort of things. But also keep in mind, do not rely on these. You know, if there's an obstacle in the field, mark that obstacle in the field. You know, they're not going to be perfect every time. In the past, I know that, you know, it only takes one little tiny twig to bring down a drone. So just be very careful in terms of, if there is an obstacle, always mark the obstacle. It's pretty much just to back up the obstacle avoidance, but it does work very well. We're very, very impressed with how this new system goes around obstacles and those sort of things. So you've got a few other things in here, the direction of the flight path. So you can see if we change that, that changes the flight path. Yeah, you can play around with that, and also your route intervals. So you can see it's changing. You can see how it's flying over that area there, but in the obstacle it's going around it. Pretty much, we would recommend, if you're spraying anywhere from 3 to 5 meters, obviously the finer the droplet, the wider you can go. In Australia though, we usually have relatively large droplets because we do a lot of herbicides, and a lot of labels require us to do anywhere from medium to heavy droplets. So I do recommend anything, you know, from 3 to 5 meters. You can get out to 6 meters on, like the V40s will go out to 6 meters, and also the faster you go, the wider the swath width you're going to get as well. So there's no perfect, you know, you must always fly at 4 meters wide at this high. It depends on how fast you're flying, your droplet size, what you're spraying, you know, depends on your crop height, a lot of different factors. when we do the manufacturer's training, we do go over, this is, you know, what we use, what we've had great success with. Also, we've done a lot of swath testing as well, so we know relatively what works and what doesn't. Down the bottom, you've also got your boundary safety distance and your obstacle safety distance. So if there's an obstacle that you just want to stay away from, you know, put a bit more of a distance between you and the obstacle. You can see it's made a wider area around that obstacle. If you just weren't sure when you marked it out, you can make that area bigger. Same with your boundary as well. You can make your boundary safety distances bigger as well, as you can see. Or if you're pretty confident, you can go right close to the boundary as well. Keep in mind that this is from the center of the aircraft. So, you know, these P100s is probably a metre and a half from the centre of the aircraft out to the tip of the prop. So you are going in an area where it could hit potentially. That's why whenever you start, it's always on 2 metres. So that's the general sort of settings. Advanced settings, that's where you can, you know, just choose to do, you know, if you want to just do those areas rather than the whole lot, you can do that. You can also do boundary runs, or just, you know, those sort of things. You can play around with that as well. So there's a few different operations there. Terrain following, you can have it off. If you're just doing a fixed height spray, you don't want it to go up and down. You know it's a relatively flat field. You don't want to move. You're saving battery. You can have it off if you want. You can have it on. That's just on, obviously. On, so you can have it on. Entry exit route is on, so it'll follow just when it gets, you know, just on the way to the job. But then when it gets into the job, it'll fly at a fixed height. Or you can have it in only the operation. So there's a few different, there is some good areas where you wouldn't have it on for when it enters the job, you know, those sort of things. Because, you know, if you're flying to a field but there's a big gully between you and the field, yeah, you probably wouldn't have it on because you don't want to drop into that gully every time it goes to the field and you're wasting battery. So there's those sort of things as well. You can turn obstacle avoidance, automatic route optimization for breakpoint continuous flight. Yeah, leave that on. That makes it very efficient. These ones are awesome with their flight route planning. Like the older systems, you'd have to tell it what area to spray. This one, yeah, very smart. Knows what's the most efficient way. Knows where to fly in the field to make it efficient. It's really good, actually. We're very, very impressed, to be honest. Entry and exit, obviously that, yeah, that's where it will go, entry and exit. You can also, when you click on entry and exit, you can add points in, so you can have it fly, you know, around buildings and stuff like that before you get to the job. Or if you know there's no obstacles between you and the field. So you see, whenever you have adapt safe point planning on, it'll fly from where you are to the closest point in the field, because it knows in the field it's safe. Because you've marked out any obstacles, you've marked out the boundaries, it's going to be safe in that field. A lot of crashes happen, most crashes happen to the field or from the field. So that's where a lot of crashes happen, because, you know, it might finish on this top corner here, but there's a shed between you and that top corner, even though it started over on the middle of the field, but now it finished over here, and you've told it to come straight home from that corner, it's going to hit that shed. Or go around it if you've got your obstacle detection on. But so you can add in those, the new ones will always follow that path. Entry and exit, they'll always follow. It doesn't matter if you press return to home, doesn't matter if any. Whereas the older P30s, if you press return to home, they would just come straight home. So these newer ones, they'll always follow that path whenever they come home. You can turn that off though, so if you turn adapt safe point planning off, you can turn that off. It's just letting you know, look, there could be hazards in the area. Do you acknowledge? Yes, okay. So now it's saying, righto, well, these are the areas that it's going to fly in with this battery load. So there's no obstacles in that area, I hope. Because if it finishes over here, it's going to come straight back to us. So just be careful. You know, we would use that if open field, we knew there was nothing in the field that between where we take off from to any point of the field was going to hit anything if it directly come back to us. So yeah, there's those sort of things as well. There's a few things you'll pick up on when you start going, obviously. So yeah, so we go back out of that. That's entry and exits. So now we go into spray settings. It sounds like a lot going on here, but once you get the gist of it, it's actually quite easy. Like, we love this app now. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot more user friendly. Yeah, it's really good. So your spraying amount, obviously, that's 50 litres a hectare. You can change that if you go back into your flight speed and also your flight. So if we dial back the speed to 3 meters a second, and we'll keep it at 4 meters interval. If we go back now to spray settings, you can see we can ramp that up even more. Obviously, the slower you go, or say if you're flying at a 4 meter swath, you tell it to go a meter swath, obviously you can really put your sprays right up there. I can't remember the exact amount, what the max is. Like if we went meter swath at, oh, go back, hang on, oh, we'll make it go slow. So if we make it go a meter a second, if we go back now, we can pump out what, 1,600 litres per hectare. Obviously that would probably take you quite a while to do a hectare, but that's an option. And you can see now, all these are only a metre swath. Very small little runs. So this is where you also choose your droplet size. You can go down from 70 to 500. Keep in mind though that you can play around with these. Like I know it does depend on your output. You can see how we've changed it just by putting our output out. Now the max at that rate is only 280 because it knows, well, the pumps are going to be going slower because we're only flying at 1 meter a second. So the pumps have just halved. So that means our droplet size is going to halve a little bit as well because it's coming out in less volume. So if that makes sense, it's a bit confusing when you first think about it, but yeah, you can change them. Like if you need it to go at 500 or something like that, or 450, but it doesn't have it on here, sometimes we just play around a bit with the dosage and also the speed, and then it can make it work how you want to work. Turn on outer nozzles, so that's when the drone turns at the end. You can turn on one outer nozzle so it does like a boundary spray. We have done that to be honest, we've been doing that a little bit, but I've also noticed that it's not an accurate, like it seems to be overdosing a little bit when it does that turn at the end. So that's why we just have that off at the moment, and then we do a boundary run at the end of the job. Some jobs it wouldn't matter, like if you're doing a fertilizing job or something like that, but when you have to be very crucial with your your sprays, especially herbicide sprays, your selective herbicide sprays, that's where you got to be careful on not really overdosing, but overlapping where you shouldn't be, if that makes sense. So normally lately we've just been turning them off, but yeah, you can have them on if you want. If you want to do just a spray, or if you want to do a flight with no sprays, up the top right hand corner you can just do enable fly, so there's no spraying, because the drone actually won't let you go unless it knows it's got water in the tank, if that makes sense. So if you want to do a demo run or something like that, just hit turn off sprays pretty much. So that's all done. I've still got it set on a meter swath. All you do now is hit start operation, or you can turn your camera on as well. So you just hit the little camera icon down the bottom, and then it'll come up with a photo. It's actually raining outside, as you can see. So that's the camera at the front, and then you can see exactly what it's doing. Yeah, that's most of it. All you do now is hit start operation, and then just go yes, yes, and then start. I'm not going to start because I think it's right next to the shed, but we're going to go out of that. And then when it comes back in, it'll come back in when it's empty, and then all you do is just fill it back up and then hit continue operation, and it'll go back out to where it finished. So yeah, it's a great little, we're very impressed with this system. So the P100 and the V40, identical operating system like this, everything is the same. So yeah, if you're watching this and you've got a V40, this video is on a P100, but if you've got a V40, identical. As well as the P40, they operate off the same system like this. That's why you can actually swarm a V40 and a P100, or a P100 and a P40 together, because they operate off the same operating system. Unfortunately, the P30s don't. They're the older system. They operate off a different flight controller as well as a different app. So yeah, that is a basic sort of run through, I guess. This was done on, when are we now? September 2022. So obviously these systems are literally brand new, probably a month. So XAG are bringing out a lot of cool new features over the next few months. So this is probably going to change. There's probably new features out there when I've recorded this video. I know for a fact that there is some awesome new features coming for these, as well as some different options and those sort of things with, attachments and those sort of things as well. So, feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll do another videos on, them in operation, also some run-throughs, some servicing and those sort of things.